Seeing that I didn't respond, she grabbed one of our ceramic bowls and smashed it on the floor. My eyes widened in shock as she grabbed one of the pieces, gave herself a tear on her right hand before quickly dropping it. She let out a loud cry, her eyes immediately forming tears. My mom rushed in.
What's all this commotion about, girls? Oh my God, Anna, how did this happen? Oh my God, you're bleeding. Oh my goodness.
I was confused. My mom looked so worried checking Anna, who was sending me mischievous smiles.
She angrily threw the bowl on the floor and stabbed me with it because I was bringing in dishes for her to wash.
She's lying, Mom. She did that to herself. I gasped in shock when my mother landed me my second slap of the day.
How dare you tell such a shameless lie against your sister?
I was dumbfounded. Of course, she'd believed Anna over me. My name's Emma, and I was born 2 years after my elder sister's birth. Before then, my parents hadn't really expected a second child. Prior to their marriage, they'd planned to only have one child. However, they were making that plan without any form of protection. When my mom got pregnant, they were both not happy. When I turned out to be a girl, and not as beautiful as they would have wanted, they hated me. I mean, what do you get when you have sex without protection? A child. I came into their lives unexpectedly. I guess my sister's hatred for me began from there. My parents pampered her so much, feeding her with the hope of being their only princess for a long time. Anna was so beautiful and looked just like my mom, whereas I was a little fat. Everyone, including the neighbors, loved Anna more. When I was born, she was nearly 3. According to my parents, she avoided me for a whole month and had to be forced to look at me afterward. They didn't term it hatred, instead, they called it disappointment. While growing up, my sister and I weren't best of friends. We attended the same school but never spoke to each other. We were like strangers forced to be related. I'd tried a couple of times to get her to like me, but it was obvious that she didn't. One day, during my second year in junior high school, my friends had brought up the topic of elder sisters. According to them, some elder sisters might act all cold and hateful, but deep down, they loved their younger sisters. I gave it a thought. Anna was always so cold and mean to me, so I thought it was just her being an elder sister. I decided to talk to her about it. After school hours were over that day, I went over to Anna's school. She was in her first year in high school, and the school was only 2 buildings away from mine. I stood outside the gate with a pack of orange juice, knowing she loved oranges. When she walked out, I smiled and called out to her, waving. She was with a group of friends. As soon as she saw me, she had a disgusted look on her face. Together with her group, she approached me.
What the hell are you doing here?
I brought you orange juice. I just thought you might want it.
Oh, you did? Wow. Isn't she such a great sister?
I felt so good when she called me a great sister. I wondered why I hadn't thought about showing her love first. I thought it was so easy. I was beaming with smiles. Well, not until I felt the cold liquid trickling down my face from my head. Looking up, my sister was wearing a proud smile as she emptied the pack of juice on me with a sly smile on her face. Once the pack was empty, she threw it on me and leaned toward me.
If you ever show your stupid self here again, I'm gonna do something even worse to you.
She brushed me aside and I fell. My eyes itched with tears as I saw all the people staring at me. Some were mocking me while others stared at me pitifully. When no one approached to help me up, I got up myself. I wiped my tears, dusted my clothes, and walked away. When I got home, Anna wasn't home. I told my parents what happened and they were pissed off. They promised to reprimand her when she got back. Around 8 p.m. when she finally returned home, oozing cigarettes, my mom asked her why she did that.
I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I had a very rough day, and she suddenly came to school when my friends were all there, and she is so fat I don't want to be seen with her. You know, it's a bit embarrassing when your fat younger sister comes to school. I always told her not to come there.
I'd found her excuse so stupid, but to my surprise, the blame was poured on me.
Why would you go there when she asked you not to? You shouldn't have gone there.
But Mom, I just wanted to give her a pack of juice.
Did she ask you for it? You need to learn to respect boundaries, Emma. This wouldn't have happened if you didn't cross hers. Now go to bed, and don't let me hear of this again.
And boom. It was buried under the carpet. I mean, I wasn't so surprised. Anna's actions had never been seen as wrong in the eyes of my parents. I cried myself to sleep that night. The memory of the embarrassment haunted me, and the unfair judgment hurt me even more. Barely 2 weeks later, we had a fight. I was doing the dishes, and Anna was continuously coming to drop in dirty dishes. Each time she would mutter, "Wash it," as if she was intentionally pissing me off, knowing how much I hated getting extra dishes. She went on until I got so mad and yelled at her to stop. The next thing I received was a resounding slap across my face.
How dare you raise your voice to me? Huh? How dare you?
The affected cheek hurt so much. I was tempted to slap her back, but I held myself, knowing I could get into trouble for that. I turned, tears rolling down my eyes, and resumed washing the dishes. However, it seemed as though Anna wanted a fight. Seeing that I didn't respond, she grabbed one of our ceramic bowls and smashed it on the floor. My eyes widened in shock as she grabbed one of the pieces, gave herself a tear on her right hand before quickly dropping it. She let out a loud cry, her eyes immediately forming tears. My mom rushed in.
What's all this commotion about, girls? Oh my God, Anna, how did this happen? Oh my God, you're bleeding. Oh my goodness.
I was confused. My mom looked so worried, checking Anna, who was sending me mischievous smiles.
She angrily threw the bowl on the floor and stabbed me with it because I was bringing in dishes for her to wash.
She's lying, Mom. She did that to herself. I gasped in shock when my mother landed me my second slap of the day.
How dare you tell such a shameless lie against your sister?
I was dumbfounded. Of course, she'd believed Anna over me. Anna was rushed to a hospital. When they returned, I was given the worst punishment of my life. They asked me to crawl around the whole yard thrice, apologizing to my sister for almost killing her. By the time I was done, I'd gotten so exhausted and had knees full of bruises, but my parents didn't care. Well, life was going that way until one day, during her final year in high school, my sister packed her bags and told my parents that she was leaving them.
I'm tired of life here. I'd love to have fun in a different way with new faces.
We were all shocked. My parents probably thought she was kidding when she opened the door. As they heard the gates close, they ran after her, and I immediately followed.
Stop right there, Anna. If you take one more step, I'm gonna disown you right now and never have anything to do with you till I die.
Anna turned to them with a smile. She threw them her middle fingers and continued her journey. I could see the devastation on their faces as they walked back to the house. Unfortunately, a year later, my dad had a heart attack in his sleep and died. Without a doubt, I knew it was triggered by his thoughts about my sister. Before his funeral, his will was read to us. As expected, my sister had received the majority of it, even after disappointing my dad. However, since she wasn't around, my mom was put in charge of everything Anna got. I was only given a house and little money. At the time, my mom didn't care much about what I used mine for. All she wished for was her precious daughter to return home. Meanwhile, I started a business online with some of the money I saved up, and I invested the rest in stock through the help of my business teacher. I soon graduated from high school. My mom wasn't in attendance because she had something busy to take care of, but I didn't mind. On my dad's first remembrance, Emma suddenly appeared. My mom rushed to her and pulled her into a tight hug. She looked so tattered. Nevertheless, she joined us in finishing up before we all headed home.
Where have you been, Anna? Do you know how lonely your actions made me feel? I've lived like a childless woman since you left, Anna.
Aren't you going to tell her to even apologize?
Still jealous of me, I see.
Apologize for what, idiot? Why are you even here? Get lost.
I was boiling with anger, but I did leave the living room. A few minutes later, I was summoned by them. My mom asked me to give my share of the will to my sister. I refused to believe it. I refused and vowed to not give my house to Anna, no matter what they did to me. They weren't planning to give up either. The next day, on my way to the mall, Anna stopped me outside the house, grabbing my shirt tightly and holding a document. She explained that it was to hand over my share to her. My main concern was freeing myself from her grip. Roughly, she pushed me to the floor and straddled me, forcing a pen into my tightened fist. With all the strength in me, I pushed her off and got on her instead. All the anger stored in me, I let them all out with the punches I was landing on her face. She couldn't defend herself. She'd always been that weak. After I'd beaten her to my satisfaction, I got up, staggered to the nearest police station to make my report. Aside from the fact that they were forcefully trying to take my share of the will and that Anna had attacked me that morning, I also added that she was a huge drug addict. I wasn't sure why I had lied, but due to how she behaved and looked, I was sure she was hanging around bad friends and was taking some kind of drugs. When the police arrived and searched her room, a stack of drugs were found in her room after I told the cops to search everywhere. She was immediately arrested and locked up in jail. Apparently, before coming to the funeral, she'd also borrowed a huge sum of money from a dangerous gang due to her substance abuse problem. News had reached them that she was in jail, and they visited our house. I wasn't home, but my mom was. She was beaten up so badly, and they forced her to send all the money in her bank account to them. She was also threatened to face more if she didn't pay my sister's debt. I had moved out of the house and went into the one I inherited. My mom had to sell all the properties and pay them off with most of the money. Out of shame, she left the country and went to Italy, where she started working as a waitress in a small restaurant. Before leaving, she'd asked for my help, but I refused and sent her out of my house. A week after she left, I visited Anna in jail. Look at you, locked up behind bars with no father and a mother who abandoned you. Karma is real, isn't it?
Shut up, Emma!
Wow. That's rich, coming from a prisoner whose freedom rests in the hands of wardens. While you rot in here, I'll be going into college. My business is going well, and my stocks are doing great too. Even more, I have my own house. I burst into laughter, seeing how speechless she went, with her eyes filled with regret. I stood up and grabbed my bag. I hope you rot in here for a very long time. Goodbye, druggie. I felt so good afterward. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.
Sky was already 3 by then. My parents didn't take her to kindergarten. Instead, they started to homeschool her. Why homeschool? Why can't she go out like other kids? Because she's not other kids, Troy. She's our Sky, our princess, our sunshine.
How can you even compare Sky to others? Look at her. Have you seen any child as pretty as her?
Yeah? The neighbor's new baby is prettier than Sky.
Ugh! Just get out. Go into your room or something. Just take your negativity away.
Yeah, I was being negative around their princess. Talk about irresponsible parents, and all I can think of is mine. Hi, I'm Troy. I was aged 6 when my parents had Sky, my younger sister. When I saw her for the first time, I thought she was heavenly. She had those huge eyes that gazed at me fearlessly, and curly hair that I envied. She was also chubby, unlike me who was really skinny. Overall, she was a healthy baby. Now, before her birth, my parents had made it quite clear to me that they weren't fans of male children. My dad would tell me stories about how they planned for a baby girl right from when they were dating. They'd even selected names. They never thought about having a boy. Honestly, when we got your gender, we were both disappointed. We wanted a girl. I didn't know what to feel then, but I can say now that I certainly didn't like it. I mean, if they wanted a girl that badly and couldn't get one at first, they didn't have to make me feel guilty for it. Anyway, my sister was brought back home from the hospital, and she took all of my parents' attention. They were always looking after her, barely sparing me a glance, or even speaking to me. Since I was quite grown already, and was a little used to it prior, I began to take care of myself. I would wake up early, get ready for school, and leave alone after fixing breakfast for myself. I did that until I finished junior school and graduated to high school. Sky was already 3 by then. My parents didn't take her to kindergarten. Instead, they started to homeschool her. Why homeschool? Why can't she go out like other kids? Because she's not other kids, Troy. She's our Sky, our princess, our sunshine.
How can you even compare Sky to others? Look at her. Have you seen any child as pretty as her?
Yeah? The neighbor's new baby is prettier than Sky.
Ugh, just get out. Go into your room or something. Just take your negativity away.
Yeah, I was being negative around their princess. I walked away and went to my room. Sky grew up very quickly. Before I knew it, she was 6 already. She was adorable, but I always avoided her because being with her brought issues with my parents. Once, I tried to switch channels when I saw that she was asleep. But as soon as I touched the remote control, she opened her eyes and asked me to put it down. But you're asleep. I'm not even gonna watch for too long.
Well, you didn't ask for my permission to change it, so I'm not gonna let you.
I was desperate. It was my favorite show. I went on my knees and begged her before she finally let me change it. I wouldn't do so, usually, but after getting beaten thrice for doing something without her permission, I learned to do so. When I finished high school at 18, she was in her final year in junior school. I wanted to further my education, but my parents complained about lack of money. We're going to take a loan. That's the only way we can actually afford to help you get that law degree you want. But you have to wait an extra year. They gave no reason to wait an extra year, but I agreed. However, I didn't just idle at home doing nothing. I got a part-time job. After a year, I'd secretly saved quite an impressive amount of money. I also applied for scholarships. Finally, I was lucky to be among those who got one of them. They were going to cover my tuition until I finished, but I had to do other basic things myself. I was satisfied with it. My parents had taken the loan already. They'd received the sum of $180,000. I'd saved up $7,000, and I needed $43,000 more to cover everything I'll be needing. Eventually, my parents gave me from the loan, and it was all settled, and I left home for college. I didn't want to be at home with my parents and have to face Sky's shenanigans. Life in college was cool. I made like-minded friends, and I studied hard. Eventually, 5 years later, I was done with college. My parents and sister attended my graduation, and I was shocked to see the luxurious display they brought in. One would think they were related to the president or something. I was quite embarrassed, but there was nothing I could do. After my graduation, I returned home. The next thing for me was to start practicing as a lawyer. However, one day, I received an email from the bank claiming I owed $137,000 alongside interest that had accumulated. I couldn't believe my eyes. I left the house headed straight to the bank. There, I was informed that, contrary to what I'd thought, my parents didn't return the remaining money to the bank. I'd take only $47,000 out of $180,000. That meant they'd spent a whooping $133,000. I felt dizzy and had to grab onto a chair and sit down. When I got home, I confronted my parents, but I received the most shocking reply. Well, Sky needed the money more.
I mean, she's a girl. She has to look girly and have all the fun she can have. We had no other means to provide the things she needed, so we used the money. What's the big deal?
Right. What's your deal? You're gonna start making money soon, and you'll pay it off. You don't have to be so stressed about it. Hearing their words was even more stressful. They were so ignorant, so careless. I didn't know what to do. $137,000 was a lot for me. I stormed off to my room to think. After a long time, I finally came to a conclusion. I drafted out my plans and way of execution. The first plan fell in place when I got a job at a law firm. The pay was higher than I imagined. I was able to get the money for an apartment after working only 2 months. While wheeling my boxes out, my parents stopped me. When are you gonna pay the loan? You can't just leave. An apartment is more important. I'm saving up for it. Don't worry too much. I'll pay you back. Now, let me leave. As I turned to leave, I remembered something, causing me to stop and face them again. I hope that spoiled daughter of yours lives a good life. She looks like one who would get you both in deep shit.
Here we go with the negativity. It's better to see you go. Take your negativity out and call us when you're done paying the loan.
Without any more words, I left their house. I worked very hard at the firm. I was so good that I got a promotion in my second month. That meant more money. Soon, I'd succeeded in saving up the $43,000 I took from them. I made it all round up to $50,000 due to the interest payment. When I got home, I met Sky and a boy her age in the living room, with her on his lap. She immediately sprang up when she saw me.
Why are you here?
Are Mom and Dad home?
Obviously they're not. What do you want?
I told her I was there to pay my part of the loan. While giving her the money, I took pictures. I also made videos, all to serve as evidence that I'd paid. Afterward, I left the house. That evening, I got a call from my mom. Apparently, Sky was a chronic gambler. She told my parents about the money I brought and also absconded with it, promising to return home after doubling it. My parents knew the money was gone, so they blamed me. They asked why I didn't pay it in full and why I didn't take it straight to the bank. Firstly, I didn't take the loan myself, so you should go to the bank and not me. Secondly, I used only $43,000 out of the money. The added one was for interest. Now, I'm cleared from everything I owe you guys. They couldn't believe their ears. They'd spent over $100,000 on Sky while I was in college, letting her party as she liked, sponsored her vacations, and even got her a car. I surely wasn't going to pay for that.
Troy, darling, don't do this to us. The bank will take up. Don't let your parents serve jail terms, Troy. Help us, please.
I had no help to render to them, and I let them know. I hung up the call and blocked their numbers. Well, 2 weeks later, the bank truly went to arrest them. Sky was still on the run, so only my parents were sentenced to 6 years each. According to the court, if Sky returned with the money, my parents would only serve 6 years. But if she didn't, then they'd be given more years. Fate seemed to be on my side. Sky wasn't caught until nearly a month later. The cops had shot her legs when she tried to escape. Nevertheless, after she was treated, the court sentenced her to 13 years imprisonment, while my parents got 2 years each added to theirs. The bank sold the house and Sky's car. After their jail terms, the debt was waiting for them. It's been 2 years since they went, and I haven't gone to see them. I do hope they regret their actions and turn a new leaf. I don't plan to be involved in their lives when they're released, though. Don't get me wrong. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. My parents refused to let me bring my friends over, but his friends were allowed. Why is he allowed to bring his friends, but I'm not? It's our birthday, not just his. Well, you're a loser, George. Coming 6th makes you a loser. I understand our parents. Hear that, George? You're nothing but a loser. This birthday belongs to your brother, along with the coming ones.
When you finally get your senses back, you can have a birthday celebration.
And that was how I was left out of a birthday celebration with my twin. I was only allowed to take a picture with him. During the cake cutting, he did it with his fellow nerds, and they all took pictures with my parents. Meanwhile, I sat by the corner of the living room, wallowing in my sadness. After the celebration, my brother was allowed to spend the night at a friend's place. After they left, my parents made me clean the whole house, including the dirt my brother and his friends had left behind. My friends had gifts prepared for me. By the time I finished cleaning the whole house, it was nearly midnight. Hello? My name is George, and I'm 29 years old. I was born as a twin. We were both treated equally while we were toddlers, but once we got into junior high school, it changed. I wasn't so interested in education, so I simply did my best. However, my brother seemed obsessed with being a genius, so he took it seriously. My parents noticed the difference between us and immediately diverted their love and attention to my twin brother alone. Whenever we returned home with our results, they would face my twin and praise him for doing well, while I was left to myself. They stopped getting us matching outfits. While my brother wore designers and all, I was made to wear regular clothes. Many times they took him shopping and left me all alone at home. Because my brother was so hell-bent on making them continuously proud of him, he never made friends. At school, he was always alone, facing his books. And at home, he was either on his books or having naps. Me, on the other hand, believed in making friends. My parents thought I was irresponsible for making friends and not being a genius like my brother, even though I always maintained being in the top 5.
You stupid child! Your brother is studying hard in his room and all you can think of is going off to your friend's place?
Are you gonna waste your life with those friends of yours? Or are you going to get back in and start studying? I turned and headed back in. Forcefully, I grabbed my books and began going through them. However, before I could finish the second one, I fell asleep. My mother came in to meet me asleep, and her loud voice woke me up.
Get your lazy ass up, you good-for-nothing! How dare you fall asleep while reading? Are you cursed?
My father came in, hearing her voice, and my mother explained it all to him.
I sincerely regret birthing you. Your brother should have been born alone. You don't deserve to be called his twin.
Although not reading regularly didn't affect my results, my parents were obsessed with reading. They continued being that way, and it even worsened as we grew up. On our 15th birthday, the cake had only my brother's face on it. My parents refused to let me bring my friends over, but his friends were allowed. Why is he allowed to bring his friends, but I'm not? It's our birthday, not just his. Well, you're a loser, George. Coming 6th makes you a loser. I understand our parents.
Hear that, George? You're nothing but a loser. This birthday belongs to your brother, along with the coming ones.
When you finally get your senses back, you can have a birthday celebration.
And that was how I was left out of a birthday celebration with my twin. I was only allowed to take a picture with him. During the cake cutting, he did it with his fellow nerds, and they all took pictures with my parents. Meanwhile, I sat by the corner of the living room, wallowing in my sadness. After the celebration, my brother was allowed to spend the night at a friend's place. After they left, my parents made me clean the whole house, including the dirt my brother and his friends had left behind. My friends had gifts prepared for me. By the time I finished cleaning the whole house, it was nearly midnight. I asked my parents if I could also have a sleepover at my friend's, but they refused, saying it was too late to leave the house. Mind you, my friend's house was only 5 houses away from ours. No matter how much I begged, they refused. I had to return to my room after they threatened to hit me. My brother returned quite late the next day. My father, without complaining, drove my brother to school in his car before heading to work, while I was made to use public transport. 2 months later, my grandfather moved in with us. He's the best gift nature brought to me. Barely a week with us, and he noticed the favoritism going on. One day, while we were having dinner, he brought the issue up. My father was quick to defend himself.
He's just a member of the family to us, Father. Nothing else. He's proven that he doesn't deserve to be part of us.
Yes, Grandpa. Could you believe that George came 6th? Mom and Dad always wanted him to move up to the 2nd position in the top 5, but he worsened the whole issue by coming 6th. He's a loser.
He surely is a loser. We're going to focus only on his twin. He can make his life as useless as he wants. All he knows is to go over with friends and try to cook.
That's the craziest part, Grandfather.
It is. I don't think he's ready for life. So, we're gonna take care of only his brother, our very good son.
I could see the look of surprise in my grandfather's eyes as his fork dropped from his hands.
You're treating your child this badly because he came 6th? Meanwhile, I checked the photo album, and for their 15th birthday celebration, I could only find one of George's pictures. What happened?
Oh, I celebrated it with my friends, Grandpa.
Since George took 6th, we thought we shouldn't celebrate him. The twin who topped the class was our son, his brother. And George isn't your son, right? I'm sorry, but you're all being so unfair to him.
With that, my grandfather stormed out of the dining room. 2 weeks later, it was time for him to leave. But before then, he called me to his room to discuss with him. I wondered what he wanted to talk about, but I heeded his call.
You'll be in college soon. Have you thought about what you'd like your future to be?
I replied that I had, and it was true. I wanted to be a renowned chef. I was always trying to help my mom cook something so I could, at least, know the basics, but she always refused and yelled at me to leave the kitchen. My grandfather asked if I was sure about pursuing that profession, and I responded that I was. Rather than going to college, I'd love to be at a cooking academy.
Your parents will never approve of this. After your graduation, I'm going to take you to start living with me.
I knew my parents would never agree, so you can imagine the joy in my heart when I realized that I'd be able to pursue my dream of being a chef. The months flew by quickly, and I finished my high school education. On our graduation ceremony day, my parents refused to let me attend.
You're going to disgrace us if they don't announce you among the top 5. Stay back at home.
You have no business being there. Your brother is the only one we want to be recognized with, not with a loser like you.
Have fun alone at home, bro. I was sad, but there was nothing I could do. I had a small phone, even though my brother had a huge and expensive one. I texted my friends and told them I won't be able to attend. They were sad, but I assured them that I was fine. I called my grandfather and told him about it. He asked me to get my things ready so that he would come take me the next day. I was tired of having to endure their mistreatment, so I quickly packed all my things in 3 boxes. The moment I finished, I heard loud noises from outside the house. As I walked out to check, I found some hefty men bringing a newly bought car in with decorations around it. I needed no magician to tell me the car was my brother's. When they returned home, it was confirmed that it did belong to my brother. While I stood there and watched, they all celebrated him. The car's key was handed to him, and he was allowed to leave with his friends in the new car. My parents finally walked into the house, not saying a word to me. I decided to speak first. Grandpa asked me to pack my things. He'd be coming down to take me tomorrow.
Well, good for you.
We don't need you here. I'm glad he's taking you away. I was hurt by their words, but I didn't say a word. The next day, as promised, my grandpa came over to the house and took me. I'm taking him to Italy. You both can focus on the twin for all I care, but you'll surely miss him. Miss him? Never. Please take him away.
Yes, take him. No one sees him worthy enough in this house. Matter of fact, I'm tired of seeing his face every day, and I'm sure my husband and son are too.
My grandfather, without exchanging words with them, left the house with me. We relocated to Italy, where he registered me into the best cooking academy. We both got new jobs to help us push through together. While working hard at my job, I channeled the same energy into the academy. Within 2 months, I was regarded as the best student by the top chef herself. I graduated after 3 years, and I was given a position at the academy to be a tutor. I did my job as diligently as I could. I'd found my place, so I ensured to do my best. With the money I made, I was able to relocate my grandfather and I into a better apartment. I also stopped him from working and put him on a monthly salary. After a year, I opened my first restaurant. Once it began doing well, I began my college education to get a degree in marketing. During these years, we heard nothing about my parents and brother. By the time I was done with my college education, I had 2 restaurants which were doing extremely well. I worked just as hard in college and emerged with an outstanding degree. I applied for a job as a marketing manager in a food company, and I was employed easily. I introduced my restaurants to them, and seeing how high I'd pushed it, agreed to partner with me. At age 27, I purchased a mansion and moved in with my grandfather. I took care of him in every way possible and made sure he never lacked anything, including affection. A year ago, I got a call from an unknown caller. I had my PA take care of the call, with the thought that it was from a client, but it turned out to be my twin brother. According to him, my parents' health was failing. He'd sold the house to take care of them, but money was still needed. His friends had abandoned him long ago, and no one was agreeing to help. He was working as a bartender, but it wasn't enough to help them. Own at home, bro. I've heard how rich you are. We're your family. I want you to forget the past and help us. Also, put me in charge of your restaurants. I'm more brilliant than you, and I'll make it even better. He still had his ego and the entitlement my parents had planted in him. Anyway, I refused to help him and told him I wanted nothing to do with them before I hung up. Reaching home, I told my grandfather about it, and he made me promise to not help them. Of course, I had no plan to. A few months later, my brother called again to inform me about the death of my parents. This time, he was a little humble and begging for a job, but I still refused. Go get a job with your perfect brain and stop calling me who you considered nothing but a loser, I warned, and that was the last time I heard from him. I later found out my brother was serving time in jail. From what I hear, the police got a tip that he sold drugs and searched his house. 2 kilos of it was found, and he was taken to jail. Apparently, he started taking drugs and selling it to make ends meet, but that only landed him in jail serves him right. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
My parents were obvious about preferring my sister to me. They never let me go on excursions, never paid for any school events, delayed my tuition every time, and let me take public transport to school. However, my sister's case was the exact opposite. Whatever she needed was provided for her. My parents would boast about her everywhere they went while I was forgotten. I was older than my sister with 2 years, but my parents made sure the school put us in the same class. Hi, my name's Misun. In a few weeks, I'll be celebrating my 35th birthday. I live in my own apartment and have 2 companies of my own. I have no family except my husband and children, as I was disowned and kicked out by my very own parents years ago. Growing up, I wasn't much of a genius academically. However, I did my best and always emerged in the top 5. My parents didn't seem satisfied by that. Instead, they were only interested in my younger sister, Sujin, who never failed to top her class. We both used to be in the top 5, but from the moment we got into senior high school, she began to top the class. I wouldn't say that was the only reason they preferred her, but that was the main one. My parents were obvious about preferring my sister to me. They never let me go on excursions, never paid for any school events, delayed my tuition every time, and let me take public transport to school. However, my sister's case was the exact opposite. Whatever she needed was provided for her. My parents would boast about her everywhere they went while I was forgotten. I was older than my sister with 2 years, but my parents made sure the school put us in the same class. During our high school graduation, I was made to sit away from them. When I was acknowledged as the 5th best student, my parents didn't cheer. They ignored me and faced my sister instead, getting her ready for her award. As expected, she was the overall best. My parents cheered the most. They nearly followed her to receive the award. I was all alone, feeling bad and blaming myself for not being good enough. After the ceremony, I approached my family. My presence was unnoticed until I touched my mom. On our way home, I was made to listen to them praising my sister nonstop until we got home. We got into college together, and it was even worse there. I had a hard time trying to take in everything, but my genius sister seemed to be having it easy. As always, she topped the class. However, I was unable to be among the top 5 as I used to be. College wasn't so easy. After the results of our first exams were released, my parents flared up on seeing I was among the top 10.
You idiot! We barely managed you being in the top 5, and you had the guts to go even lower? What kind of a daughter are you? How could you do this to us, huh? Your sister topped her class again. Do you have no atom of shame in you?
This is the reason we love her more. She's better than you could ever be.
While they were yelling, my sister walked in.
You gotta study well, son. You're so terrible. I can't cope with the fact that you're my sister.
She's nothing but an unserious fellow. You shouldn't be speaking to her.
I just thought she needed to be told the truth. Son, don't you think you should drop out? Our parents barely have enough money for me. You should drop out so they can focus on me.
Yes, your sister's right. You should drop out and get a job or something. I don't think you're meant for education.
Consider that option. You don't have to worry about getting a job later in the future. Your sister's going to grow up and own her own hospital. You could work for her later on.
I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I'm going to work harder and emerge with a better result.
You know that's impossible, me son.
Yes, son. You don't have to try. You can't get better results.
I wouldn't know unless I try. Excuse me. I walked away from their presence and headed to my room where I buried my face in my pillow and cried. The next exams, I was in the top 5 again. I returned home filled with excitement, but as usual, my parents ruined it.
Your sister was the overall best again. Do you think we would be happy seeing you come 3rd?
Get lost, loser. If only you could come right behind me. I know it's impossible for you to go past me, but at least quit being a loser and try being right behind me.
But I'm trying. I'm doing all my possible best to satisfy you all. This is unfair.
Unfair? You ungrateful wench. We let you stay at our house, put clothes on you, and even feed you. But what do you bring to us? Disappointment.
Ignore her, sweetheart. She can't help but try to pour her anger on someone.
If you say one more word, you'll get it from me. You good for nothing.
What did I ever do to y'all? You shouldn't have had me if all you planned to do was make me feel miserable every day of my life.
We do regret having you.
We would have been fine with our beautiful daughter.
You heard that, loser.
Why? Because she's brilliant and I'm average. Huh? I'm your daughter too. Love me too. I'm doing everything I can to impress you. I was in heavy tears, but they didn't seem to have even the slightest amount of pity for me.
Well, if you're being entitled to our love just because we're your parents, then I disown you.
What?
You heard him right, stupid. From this moment, you cease to be our daughter. Take your things and leave our house.
but I have nowhere to go. Please don't do this to me.
You could try sleeping in the streets. Make friends with your soon-to-be fellow homeless people.
I could hear the mockery in her so-called advice. I was sad. I didn't think my parents would ever disown me over my results. I went on my knees and begged them because I had nowhere to live except their house. Please don't kick me out. I could stay in your house as a stranger, if that's what you want. I could get a part-time job too. Just don't kick me out. I beg you.
Daddy, I'm getting irritated by her, please. Should I throw her bags out myself?
Oh, sweetheart, how can I let an intelligent young lady like you touch a loser's bag? I'll do it myself.
My father dashed into my room, took my things, and threw them out carelessly.
I never want to see you again, loser. Leave my house.
I tried to beg my mom, but she pushed me away roughly. Without a choice, I took my things and walked away, dejected. I was left alone on the streets, hungry and in tears. I'd also only finished my first year. I worried about where to get the money to further my education. I got a job at a multi-purpose factory 2 weeks later, but I lived on the streets for 2 whole months before I was able to get myself a small apartment. Although it was quite uncomfortable, I endured it. Life at the factory was insanely stressful, but the pay covered up for the stress. The next month, I already had my tuition fee. I spoke to the manager about working part-time.
This is going to cut a quarter out of your salary.
I was fine with that. I agreed and continued my education while working. Life was hard for me, but I was relentless. I maintained being in the top 5, ignoring my parents' obsession of topping the class. 3 years later, I was finally done. Fortunately, a month after, I got a better job at a successful company as the assistant marketing manager. I was also given a house and a company car. Those weren't my goals, but I was overjoyed knowing that I was slowly going up the ladder. Meanwhile, my sister came out as one of the best students. My parents were disappointed, as they expected her to maintain her streak until the end. However, they didn't lash out on her. 6 months later, she got a job as an assistant nurse. My parents were enraged.
Not even a nurse, but an assistant? We expected you to open up a hospital.
A hospital? Do you think it's that easy? How am I going to open a hospital without money, huh?
Well, you better work hard to get a promotion and open a hospital soon. We need to start getting our money back.
But Sujin wasn't doing well at the hospital. In fact, she was the worst worker. Eventually, she was fired.
What? How dare you get fired?
How dare you yell at me? Did I fire myself? Huh?
Meanwhile, I, on the other hand, was the delicate egg of the company I worked for. I made the company grow bigger by working hard on the marketing of our products. Soon, we were one of the best. My salary was increased too. I saved up enough money and invested a lot. A year later, I was ready to start my own company. I informed them about it, and they were nice enough to support me by offering to be my first partner. With my great marketing skills, I was able to grow my company rapidly. 2 years later, I opened my second company. My family, however, were having it hard. Sujin couldn't get a lasting job. She was doing everything wrongly.
You used to top your classes. What's happening to you?
Top my classes, my ass!
What?
Yes, I knew you both loved me more than me, son. I needed to find a way to maintain that. Seeing how you glorified our cousins who topped their class, I thought I could go that way. So, I stole your money every session and paid the teachers to make me top the class. Did you wonder why it didn't happen during graduation? Because they didn't want my money anymore.
What are you saying?
I'm saying you ruined my life. I didn't even want to be a doctor. It was your dream, not mine.
My parents were shocked. To make it worse, they discovered, 2 weeks later, that my sister was pregnant and had no idea who owned the child. As if that wasn't enough, she tried to abort the baby, but it was the worst decision. She'd gone to a quack. My parents took her to a hospital and she was diagnosed with kidney issues in addition to her initial problem. My parents were heartbroken. For the first treatment, they had to sell their house to pay. They both squatted with my father's unmarried sister. I suddenly got a call from them.
Me, son, child, please help us. We don't have enough money for your sister's treatment and can barely even feed. Do something, please.
I could tell how desperate they were. I'm sorry, but I have no sister. I also have no parents, and I have no idea who you both are, nor do I have any money to give to you.
Don't do this to us, me son. We know you have two companies that are doing well. You're rich. You should help us because we took care of you.
Like I said, I don't know who you are. If you call me again, I'll be forced to report you to the cops. I wish you nothing but sadness. With that, I ended the call. They tried as hard as they could, but they eventually lost Soo-jin. Staying too long without treatment led to her death. My father's sister, who was housing them, also kicked them out since she was planning to get married. They were left without a house, money, or child. Last time I heard about them, I learned that they'd lost their minds and were roaming on the streets. I'm married to a lovely man who's completely different from my father, and he also loves our twin girls equally. That's all that matters. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment. And it suddenly clicked. I had always thought that my paralysis was the result of my accident, but in reality, it was all because my mother had been drugging me, and all so that she could use me as a prop to get money from my grandparents. It had been very clever, masking my condition by saying it was diabetes. At least not until I met someone who actually had the condition and figured things out. After figuring it out, though, what my grandparents were saying made a lot of sense, but I didn't think it was enough. I was beyond furious just knowing that my disease was caused by my mother. Hi there, my name is Tanya, and I'm just wondering if anyone else out there has a mother as clinically insane as mine. Like, I'm well aware that many people have abusive parents, but mine takes the cake. To start off with, my parents never got married. They were junkies, and when I was born, they both promised their parents that they would get clean, but unfortunately, my father never did, and before I was even 1, he passed away from an overdose. After that, my mother swore that unlike my father, that she would do the hard work and never do drugs again. My grandparents believed her, and for some time, she walked the straight and narrow. I remember when I was very young as a pretty happy time. That is until my accident. My mom told me that I had been playing on a jungle gym when I passed out and fell. The doctors said that the fall damaged my spine and caused me to be bound to a wheelchair. Later after that, we found out that I had passed out because I was diabetic. So on top of being stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, I also had to take insulin for my condition as well. Now, neither of these things, really on their own, prevented me from having a happy childhood. But my mother was terrible with money and never could figure out a way to save up enough money to cover my medical bills and to pay for her lifestyle. Luckily for us, her parents, my granny and grampy took pity on us and would routinely give her money.
Hey, listen, I'm a little short this month. Can you please give me some money to help cover Tanya's medical bills? Her insulin is just so expensive. It's just awful how much she needs just in order to stay alive. Yes, of course we will help.
Anything for our amazing granddaughter.
The older I got, the more money my mom seemed to need. Although to me, it never really seemed like my medication routine ever changed. But my grandparents always came through, and whenever my mom was a bit short on cash, they always gave her what she needed without question. Over the years, they must have given her tens of thousands of dollars. There were definite times when I felt guilty being sick and being a burden not only on my mother, but on my grandparents as well. Even with that in mind, my life was a pretty happy one overall. The first indication that something was unusual was when a new student moved to my school. Her name was Rebecca, and we had a lot in common. Both of us loved the same kinds of music and movies, and she had diabetes too. However, one day I saw her testing for her sugar levels and was incredibly confused. "What are you doing there? What is that machine?"
This? It's my blood glucose meter. It helps me measure how much sugar is in my blood so that I know if I need to eat something or if I need to take insulin to balance my diabetes. Don't you have one as well?
No. I've never seen such a thing before.
I thought you said you had diabetes just like me. How do you manage your sugar without one?
I don't know. My mom always gives me my insulin shots.
She does? I give myself mine all the time.
You do? How?
Well, I inject them into my arm or stomach. My doctor showed me.
Oh, my mom always injects them into the middle of my back.
That's really weird, Tanya. Are you sure you have diabetes?
I was incredibly confused, and when I went home, I asked my mother why my medication was so different than Rebecca's, and she told me that that was normal and that we just took different medications, and that mine was safer and needed fewer doses than hers. Something about the way that she told me about it, though, felt odd. I had never had a reason to doubt my mother before, but suddenly I felt that something didn't feel right. Later, when I was alone, I went online and searched for diabetes medications and how they were administered, and what Rebecca told me was entirely true. I couldn't find anything about the way I was getting my treatments. I was so confused, but I also knew that if I went back to my mother, she would be upset that I didn't trust her and that she would only repeat herself. And so I didn't say anything for a bit, but one night, when my mother was out with some friends of hers, my granny and grampy came over to look after me while she was gone, and a few minutes after they came over, I told them that I was going to my room to study, but secretly I snuck into my mom's bedroom and began to snoop through her closet. I wanted to find where she kept my diabetes medication, and after some digging I found a large metal tin. Inside was a box of syringes, a couple of plastic bags with funny-smelling crystals inside, a pipe and bottle that had the name of a drug on it that I couldn't identify. I brought the tin along with everything inside to my grandparents. "Hey guys, I found this in my mom's room. Do you guys know what this stuff is?"
Yes, that garbage is the same kind of drug that your father overdosed on. Your mother swore that she stopped using such things.
How do you know she is using them? Maybe she just keeps them as a reminder.
I'm sorry, Tanya, but if they are in the house, then that means that she is using drugs again.
So what should we do?
We shall of course take you away to live with us. As for your mother, we don't know.
And what about the other drug? It's not insulin, so what is it? They didn't know, and so they looked it on the internet and found that it was a paralytic drug. And it suddenly clicked. I had always thought that my paralysis was the result of my accident, but in reality, it was all because my mother had been drugging me, and all so that she could use me as a prop to get money from my grandparents. It had been very clever, masking my condition by saying it was diabetes. That way, no one would question her giving me shots all the time. At least not until I met someone who actually had the condition and figured things out. After figuring it out, though, what my grandparents were saying made a lot of sense, but I didn't think it was enough. I was beyond furious just knowing that my disease was caused by my mother. She had made me think that there had been something very wrong with me, and that I was a burden that held my family down, and all so that she could use the money to feed her drug habit. I told my grandparents that I really needed to do something about the way that my mother had used me, and that I really needed them to trust me. We left a note saying that we found my mother's drugs and that I was going to stay at my grandparents' house for a few days. I included a section that she wasn't to contact me until she was ready to get clean and give up the drugs, and that I was taking my insulin medication with me, so she didn't have to worry about my condition while she worked on herself. My grandparents were confused, but they wanted what was best for me, and so they chose to trust me, at least for a little while. For 4 days, I stayed at my grandparents' house, and on the 5th day, my mother showed up. She looked incredibly rough. She was pale and sweating a lot and was clearly in withdrawals.
Hey, Tanya, I'm so very sorry. I really did try to stop using drugs, but I just couldn't kick the habit. But for you, I promise that I'll get clean. I haven't used in the last 4 days.
Well, I'm proud of you. It can't be easy. However, that hardly excuses you for what you've done to me for so many years.
What do you mean? I've been a great mother to you.
Oh, you have? It was then that I stood up out of my wheelchair and punched her as hard as I could in the stomach. The surprise of it and the force of it made her double over in pain. I could tell that she was taken by surprise. You made me think that I was going to be paralyzed for the rest of my life. There is no way of knowing if giving me those drugs damaged my organs. You used me as a tool to steal money from my grandparents and to feed your addiction. That was when she broke out in tears and began sobbing and apologizing. Oh, spare me those crocodile tears. You have no idea how angry I am with you. There is nothing you can say or do that will ever make me forgive you. I hate you more than I've hated anything in my whole life. But you should know that I've written my life story and spread it online. The story is spreading online like wildfire, and people really seem to hate you almost as much as I do. Oh, and I also told the police what you did. They would like word with you. Just then, police officers came up. They had agreed to wait until I mentioned them, and then they swarmed my mother and threw her in handcuffs and then in the back of police car. Weeks later, the public was crying out for blood. People everywhere online were talking about what my mother had done to me, and they were demanding that she face serious punishments for the pain and torment that she caused me. As a result, the judge took that into account when he sentenced her to prison. She ended up being convicted of child abuse, child endangerment, and the fact that she essentially tormented and held me captive for my whole life was taken into account. To be honest, I was surprised when she was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. A few years later, I was approached by a movie studio that wanted to buy the rights to my life story, and I ended up being given quite a huge amount of money. I tried to give some of it to my grandparents in order to make up for all the money that my mother stole from them, but they refused and made me keep it all for myself. It really was a good amount, as I was able to pay for college, a new car, and had more than enough to buy a house, and still have some money to put away for a rainy day. I'm very happy with my life now, although I would trade it all for a chance at a normal life, even though I now live a happy and healthy life. The pain of knowing what my mother did to me still haunts me, and the only solace I have is knowing that my mother is beaten up regularly in prison. Her fellow inmates hate her as well, and make sure to remind her of the pain that she inflicted on me. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
And the next day, all of my belongings were scattered on the front lawn, and I was told that I had 10 minutes to gather up as much as I could before my father would run outside with a baseball bat, and if I was still there, he promised that he would break every bone in my body. I ran around feverishly and gathered up what I could, and then ran away. Hello there, my name is Michael, and my family is absolutely terrible. I know lots of people say that, but mine truly is. Here, let me explain. For starters, I have an older brother named Phil, and in my family, Phil is the golden child. In my parents' eyes, he can do no wrong. Even when he actually did misbehave, they would just ignore what he did, or make excuses for it. The first time that it happened that I can remember. My brother and I were playing outside during the summer, and were playing with our water guns, and at one point I couldn't find Phil. But then, I went to see where he was. I noticed that he was inside in his room, and he had changed. Suddenly, our father came roaring into Phil's bedroom, and he looked furious. "Michael, you have some explaining to do." My father grabbed me by my shirt and dragged me through the house and out to the garage. Once outside, I could see what had made him so angry. Every square inch of the garage was soaking wet. It was clear to me that Phil had turned the hose on in the garage and had used it to spray down every square inch, and had even flooded it with a few inches of water too. "What on earth possessed you to do this? Do you have any idea how much damage you caused?" But it wasn't me. I didn't do anything. It must have been Phil. "Don't lie to me on top of everything. Why would Phil do this? He's a good boy and not an idiot like you. Plus, you are soaking wet and he is dry and in clean clothes. I swear I didn't do it. He must have done it and then changed." "Enough with your lies. You're grounded for the next 3 months. My father then slapped me so hard that he split my lip open and caused it to bleed. After he did, I ran from the room and hid in my closet. As I ran away, though, I saw Phil smiling, clearly pleased at the chaos that he had created. For years, it was one thing after another. Even when it was obvious that Phil had been behind something, our parents always found a reason to blame me. It was just so infuriating. The final straw, though, came when I was 17, and Phil was 19. Our grandfather had recently passed away, and he had left our parents a large amount of cash. The problem was that our grandfather had despised banks and had always kept all his money at home. So when our parents had inherited it, they were given a duffel bag filled with money. They were planning to deposit it into the bank, but they were so busy making funeral arrangements that they temporarily put the money in our father's safe. He had one in his home office, and while they were out planning the funeral, Phil snuck in and somehow managed to get the safe open, and he stole the money. He was, of course, smart enough not to spend it right away, and even took a few $100 bills and planted them in the top drawer of my dresser. When our parents came home that night, our father went to his safe to grab some money as they would need to pay the vendors that they had hired for the funeral service, and when he opened the safe, He was mortified to find all the money was gone. Without skipping a beat, our parents stormed to bedroom and instantly assumed that I was the one that stole their money. Okay, where is it? Where is what?
Don't play stupid with us, you disgusting thief. We know that you were the one to steal the money. This is a new low, even for you.
I seriously have no idea what you are talking about. So you weren't the one to steal our inheritance from the safe? Do you honestly expect me to believe you? While my father glared at me, my mother began searching through my belongings and found the money that Phil had hidden in my dresser and presented it as proof that I was guilty.
Look what I found.
Where did that come from? I swear I have no idea why that money was in there. Just stop. This proves that you stole from us. Now, if you don't give the money back this very instant, we will have no choice but to kick you out and quite possibly press charges against you for this. Then call the police, because I didn't take anything. If that's what you want, then I sure will. I glared right back at them and just waited. When the police arrived, our parents told them what they suspected to have happened, but after the police had thoroughly searched my room, they had not found any additional money. They told our parents that with the small amount of money that they found, the most that they could do was hold me in jail for a week, while a judge decided how much community service I would be sentenced to. My parents wanted me to go to prison or juvenile hall at the very least, but there just wasn't enough evidence to support the idea that I had committed the crime. They were hopping mad, and the next day, all of my belongings were scattered on the front lawn, and I was told that I had 10 minutes to gather up as much as I could before my father would run outside with a baseball bat, and if I was still there. He promised that he would break every bone in my body. I ran around feverishly and gathered up what I could, and then ran away. I was so young that I really didn't know what to do with myself. With what little money I had in my savings account, I rented a room in a very sleazy motel and got myself a job at a grocery store stocking shelves. It was incredibly scary living on my own at the age of 17, but I managed to make things work. I did live in that motel for over a year, though. It was all I could afford with the little money I was making, and it allowed me to keep going to school. The owner of the motel took pity on me and gave me food every now and then as well. Honestly, it wasn't too bad, aside from the loneliness around the holidays. Those were hard, but eventually I graduated high school, and I was then left with deciding what I wanted to do next. Part of me was really curious about what I would be good at, and then it hit me. I had been wrongly accused of so much in my life already. Maybe I should become a police officer, and eventually a detective. That way I could protect people from being wrongly convicted by catching only true criminals. Without another thought, I applied to the police academy, and after graduating, joined the police. It took a few years, but I eventually did become a detective. It was so fulfilling. I truly felt like I was making a difference in the world, and I had all but forgotten my toxic family when I got a phone call from them. It actually annoyed me more than anything, but I figured that maybe I would hear them out. It was possible that they were calling to reconnect, although my instincts were telling me that if I put too much hope into that idea that I was setting myself up for disappointment. And boy, did I end up being right. Michael, is that you? Yes, Dad. What do you want? Oh, Michael, it's tragic news. Your brother is in serious trouble. Okay. What kind of trouble? He's been wrongfully accused of all kinds of terrible things, like stealing a car and selling drugs. They even accused him of attacking a police officer. And how am I supposed to help him? Well, you're a police officer, right? Couldn't you just make the charges go away? I'm not making any promises, but I'll look into things and get back to you. I knew it. I knew that they would only ever contact me if I could do something for them. At any rate, I did look into what Phil was being accused of. After all, he was indeed wrongfully accused. Then I would help him, but my intuition was telling me otherwise. As I read over the arresting report, I saw that Phil had been tested for drugs and had several illegal substances in his system when he was arrested, and had tens of thousands of dollars worth of drugs in the trunk of his car when he was pulled over. There was even a dash cam in the police car that pulled him over that saw Phil get out of his car and kick and punch the arresting officer once it was clear that he was caught. Everything about what my brother was accused of was true. The car he was driving had even been reported as stolen 2 days before his arrest. Once I confirmed this, I called my father up and happily gave him the bad news. I reviewed the evidence, and Phil did it. Oh, so what? Even if he did, you're family. Can't you just make this all go away? Even if I could. Why the hell should I? I'm not going to risk my career to help you, and that moron get off breaking the law. It's bad enough that you accused me of stealing money when I was 17 that I didn't, and kicking me out of the house for it. But now you call me up out of the blue to ask me to jeopardize my future to help you?
Oh, that's just in the past. We did eventually figure out that it was Phil that stole the money, and we punished him for it.
Punished him? How?
Well, we grounded him for a few days. I don't see what the problem is. That's in the past.
In the past? So not only did you find out that I never stole the money, but you also never tried to find me and contact me to apologize for blaming me for something that I never did. You had the truth, but you still blamed me? Do you not see how evil that is?
Hey, we tried, but you were always a handful.
Well, I'm glad that we had this conversation, just so you know. Phil was the troublemaker. It was never me. So you basically have only yourself to blame for him turning into a complete piece of crap. Where were you when you realized you had wrongfully kicked me out and forced me to live in a motel for a year? So now, as far as I'm concerned, you and Phil should share a cell together. And with that, I hung up the phone. I knew that I could probably speak to the prosecutor and ask them to go lenient on my brother, but I did the exact opposite. I called them up and asked them to make sure that he got the fullest punishment possible. As a result, the attorney agreed and demanded that my brother be held as an example of what not to do. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Chances are that if I hadn't intervened that he would have only gotten a year or two at most with a lot of community service, but after what he and my parents had put me through, I wasn't going to let the chance to get revenge on him slip away unnoticed. My parents called me every day right up until Phil's trial and demanded to speak with me, but I just let their calls go to voicemail. I knew that I could just as easily tell them that Phil was screwed, but I wanted to see their reactions when the judge handed their golden child such a heavy sentence. And honestly, it didn't make up for all the pain that they caused me, but it did feel like I got a small measure of justice. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.